Today's podcast is being presented by Podgo. You know, I have a lot of podcasters that appear on this show because they want to promote their show. I know lots of them want to monetize their show as well. Well, Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast if you've got one, and providing podcasts with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co. And don't forget to mention, how did you hear about Podgo? Just say, too many podcasts. Thanks.
That was a long meeting. Is it lunchtime yet?
I'm starving as well. But I'm starving. The Doubts. Jared Easley is in the Sherpa chalet today.
Do you think the Doubts will mind if I finish off the last donut?
I highly doubt it. Oh brother. Can we find a better joke writer? Anyone? Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa chalet. As a reminder, please don't disturb the yak.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hey there, rebels, and how you doing? It's me, Jim, the podcast Sherpa, and welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts and more. That's right. And today's about podcasts, but you do get a little bit more because this week it's 2 for Too Many Podcasts. We have an episode of Too Many Podcasts today, and we have an episode of Too Many Podcasts tomorrow. Why are we doing that? Because it's a theme week.
It's theme week. It's theme week. It's theme week.
And I'm calling this theme Starving and Eating. Well, not exactly, but I figured it's a good way to lump things together. Today has to do with starving, but I'll get to that in a second. It's not about actual starving, so don't worry. If you've got that Snickers bar in your hand, you're fine. But how about a little bit about our guest today?
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
His name is Jared Easley, and he hosts a podcast called Starve the Doubts. Get it? Starve. So I was on his show a little while ago, and I'll include the link to that interview in the show notes, in the Sherpa sheet, if you want to check it out. We had so much fun. And I think, actually, if you listen to this interview first, you might get some of the reference points in some of the silliness in his interview on his show. But we had a great time, and it was a real pleasure meeting him. And we talked about all sorts of different things. He is an accomplished writer as well as a podcaster. And he's an all-around nice guy, too. And we're buddies on Twitter, and we always have lots of nice things to say about each other. If you look on my Twitter page, you will see that someone actually wrote an article about why they like his podcast. This wasn't a person who was paid to do it. This is just a person who loves his podcast, and he's also a podcaster, too. So that's a pretty high praise for Jared, and well-deserved, I might add. So before I keep carrying on, why don't we just head on down to the conference room at the Sherpa Chalet, and we will listen to my interview with Jared Easley of Starve the Doubts. Hello, Rebels. Yes, it's time for what we call one of those podcaster interviews. But we are very lucky because today's guest is a guy named Jared Easley, who hosts a podcast called Starve the Doubts. And he's been doing it a little while, and we're going to get to know him and talk about some of the episodes, and maybe we'll do a couple of card tricks if we even have time for that. So we'll see what happens. So here he is, the host of the Starve the Doubts podcast, Mr. Jared Easley. How's it going, Jared?
Jim from Strong Island. I appreciate you lowering your standards to have me on your show. Thank you so much.
Well, that's okay. My standards have always been pretty low anyway.
Well, I want to say that when you're going to do card tricks, if you're going to do card tricks, you might as well do them on a podcast. I think that's the best way to do card tricks.
That's right. Or even coin magic as well.
Yeah, so I may steal that one from you, but I'm looking forward to that segment of the show. So I'm sure people will believe whatever we tell them.
That's right. I guess, You know what? I want to start this interview off like how you started your very first interview off. What's the best concert that you've ever been to?
You're a man who's done some homework. That's interesting. Okay, so concerts, I've been to a variety of different shows, from rock and roll classic bands to James Taylor. So anything in between. I've been to symphony orchestras and stuff. So I've seen some shows that I've really enjoyed, and to narrow it down is always so brutal. But one of my favorite artists is not well known, but he lives in Asheville, North Carolina. He's a folk singer. Been doing music for about 40 years, and his name is David Wilcox. If you Google David Wilcox, there's one in Canada and then there's one in the US. It's the one in the US, but he's just an amazing guitar player. He plays in different tunings. He'll sometimes change the tuning of the guitar in the midst of while he's playing. It is he's very, very good at telling stories while he's playing the guitar and then instantly going back into the song. He's just got a craft that he has mastered over 40 years. So David Wilcox, if you ever get a chance, a particular song that's one of my favorites is called "Eye of the Hurricane." It's about a lady who gets on an old Honda Hurricane motorcycle, and I'll leave it at that. But if you listen to the song, it's a powerful song. But he's got so many good stuff, and he's been doing a lot more live Facebook lives where he's playing just kind of in his living room, and he'll play for about an hour. And a lot of songs are songs I haven't heard before, but they're still excellent because it's his style, it's his songwriting and his storytelling. And so that's the answer. Is David Wilcox. The second answer is a gentleman named Trace Bundy. He doesn't even sing, but what he does is he takes the guitar and he will do different loops and different things, and he'll just play music that you've probably heard. An example might be a song from U2 or "Sweet Child of Mine" by Guns N' Roses, or um, just so many other types of songs. And he'll, with loops and different things, he'll make this one guitar into multiple instruments, and it's just fascinating to see this guy do what he does. He's on YouTube. Trace Bundy is his name. He's based out of Boulder, Colorado, but just a fantastic musician. If anybody gets a chance to look him up on YouTube, you should. So those are two excellent concerts. If you ever get a chance to see David Wilcox or Trace Bundy, go ahead. So yeah, those are my answers. Not the common pick that people might think.
Yeah.
But that's the people I'm going to encourage folks to look up and check out. Maybe you learn some new music. So
Yeah, those are definitely some interesting choices. So, have you always liked different types of music growing up, or
I
like
have.
a wide variety?
I started playing guitar when I was young. I was under this delusion of grandeur that if you learn to play guitar, women will like you. that wasn't necessarily true for me, but I did enjoy playing guitar, and I played all throughout middle school and high school. I was in a couple bands, and I had this kind of fascination with this idea that I was going to try to make it in music, and that never really happened. But I did have a lot of fun and played with some friends, and we kind of mini toured, if you will, and played some gigs and got paid a little pocket change. And eventually I grew out of that phase. But for that time, man, it was some of the best memories. I love music. I love playing guitar. At the time, I loved songwriting. I don't know that my songs were that great, but in that season of my life, that was just a lot of great memories. So yeah, man, love music. Even if I'm not playing the guitar, I certainly appreciate music. When I'm working at home during this quarantine time, some of the best productive time for me, Jim, is when I'm listening to like epic soundtracks in the background. So an example might be the movie Interstellar, which I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I love sci-fi type stuff. I love movies that are kind of dystopian and stuff. But Interstellar has a fantastic soundtrack by Hans Zimmerman, and another one is Inception, great movie. The soundtrack from that, but I'll listen to different soundtracks and I'll just kind of get in the zone. And man, next thing you know, I'm just in a workflow, and things are happening. And so that's kind of when I need to just buckle down and get focused. I pump up some really epic soundtrack music, and it kind of gets me going.
So I'm wondering, like, if you're in a rush, do we hear like the Flight of the Valkyries in the background going dun 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 dun, dun.
If I'm gonna listen to that particular song, I prefer to listen like a cover of it. So I don't want to hear like an orchestra. I want to hear somebody play that on like a 6-string acoustic guitar. And believe it or not, there's people out there that can do that. Now that's some of the that's another thing. I love to get on YouTube and find classic songs like the one you just mentioned, and find someone with a single instrument that has mastered that song in a way that we wouldn't normally hear it. And so I've found a few artists that are able to do things like that, and I like listening to that stuff as well.
It's funny what you just said before about if you had a guitar that women would notice you and all that. There was something I'd read a while back. They said for dating sites, they said if you put a picture of yourself with a guitar on your picture on your dating profile, that women are more drawn to that. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that works, but like a guy who plays the tuba should probably get some credit too, because he's lugging all that stuff around. He needs all that breath control. That's got to amount for something.
If a woman is smart, she's going to think about what you just described and how that could be beneficial in more ways than just playing the tuba. So I would say you're probably onto something. I'll leave it at that.
That's right. And he'd be an instant hit around Oktoberfest as well.
Well, there you go. And and it's a shame that people that play instruments like the tuba don't get more respect. I think they should.
That's right. We need an album of tuba classics.
There might be one out there, and we're just naive. So I'm going to take a look after this episode.
There have been albums that I like unique stuff too. I was always into like comedy music, novelty music, and I know they actually had like orchestras of kazoos where they would do like classic rock songs.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
just on kazoo.
As silly as that sounds, it takes a lot of talent to be able to come up with the different harmonies and the different melodies and things. That I think that's an interesting thing. Like, we can laugh at it. Oh, it's kazoos, but there's some talent to that.
Yeah, and you have to figure if you're doing more than one kazoo, and like you said, you have to arrange it the right way, because otherwise it just sounds like buzzing. It just sounds.
Yeah, that's assuming it sounds good. Yeah. You're right. If it doesn't sound good, it's just a bunch of noise. And probably not going to listen to it too long.
Yeah, I don't think anybody could actually ever say, well, I'm a really bad kazoo player. It's like, no, you're okay.
That is a common joke, though. It seems like if somebody's asked if they play an instrument and they don't, they might say that, well, I play the kazoo, or I play the triangle, something like I play the radio. I've heard them all. So.
Okay.
There is no wrong answer.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your podcast now that we've talked about kazoos and tubas.
I would be glad to talk about those things too, but yeah, we can talk about the podcast.
Okay. So when did you start doing your show?
At the time, this was probably around 2012 is when I wanted to start. And at the time, blogging was even more popular than it is now. But that was kind of, if you were in the marketing space, that was what a lot of people would tell you to do. Hey, you need to start a blog. And I just didn't have that interest in writing articles. I was very self-conscious, Jim, about my writing at the time. I've grown out of that a little bit. And I've actually written 2 books since then, which is something I didn't think I would do. But at the time, I didn't want to blog, and I thought, well, what are my other options? And then I learned a little bit about podcasting, but I was under the false impression, again, this is 2012, that, well, if you're going to podcast, you got to have this expensive microphone, you got to have this extensive setup, you got to learn how to do it, you got to edit, and I kind of, I'm ashamed to admit, I allowed a lot of self-doubt and self-sabotage kind of kick in, and I didn't start a podcast for a full year. I put it off, even though I just sensed deep down, this is something I should do. And eventually what changed that for me is I found out about a simple microphone. I don't have one right in front of me. It's not the one I'm using currently for this episode, but I found out about the Audio Technica 2100. And that microphone was reasonably priced. I want to say at the time, maybe $50. And it sounded amazing as a USB mic you could plug into a laptop. It also had an XLR port on it for any audio nerds out there. They know about what that means. So you could plug into a mixer if you wanted to. But I found out about that mic, and then there was really no excuses after I found out about that. And so I bought that mic, and then it was just like off to the races. Is like I started booking Skype calls with people I wanted to do interviews with, and that was at the time was a lot easier than I anticipated. There were different authors and different people I wanted to meet and connect with, and so I just said, "Hey, can I interview you on my podcast?" And a majority of them said yes. And next thing you know, I had booked all these interviews. I was like, I didn't even have a podcast yet. So it was like, I probably should start this podcast because now I've got all these, episodes in the can, so to speak. So that's kind of how I got started.
Okay. And where did you get the title from?
Yeah. So my uncle, I call him my uncle. He's my dad's cousin. He's a pretty successful businessman. Lives in Dallas Fort Worth, and he's looked out for my family and I for many years now. Just been somebody to kind of keep an eye on us and check in, and just been a real generous person, family member. And when I was probably, I want to say maybe 18, and I'm not 18 anymore, Jim. I won't tell you my age, but I'm a little older than that. But at the time when I was 18, somehow we got on the conversation of success, and he had said to me something that really stuck with me. And I didn't realize it would stick with me when he was, saying what he was saying. But he said, Jared, if you really want to be successful in life, there's three things you need to do. And so I'm like, okay, let's hear what he has to say, because he's moderately successful. Maybe this might be something that'll be helpful. And the things that he said initially were kind of cliche. Like you said, like the first one was like, treat others the way that they want to be treated. Okay, that's pretty. That's not like mind blowing. That's not news breaking thing. The second thing was always do your best. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then the third thing he said, that's what caught my ear. And he said, the third thing you got to do is you got to starve the doubts. And at that time, being 18, I didn't really fully appreciate that term, but that term always stuck with me. Starve the doubts. That kind of sounds like motivational, hoorah, whatever, fluffy stuff. But as I've gotten a little bit older, I've gained responsibilities as a husband, as a dad, as a business owner, and other things that other roles and responsibilities in my life. I've started to realize, man, that actually really is essential in anything that you do. Is you're going to come upon different experiences and different things in your life, or you're going to feel compelled to do certain things, or you're going to have to navigate treacherous waters, so to speak. And when those times come, you really do have to sometimes fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to figure it out as you go. You have to have courage. You have to be brave, and starving the doubts is a big piece of navigating, working through challenges, and then overcoming obstacles. And so when I was considering the name of the podcast, that title really stuck out to me, and I thought, that's what I'm going to go with. And I went with it, and so far I've kept it all this time just because I love that title. The podcast is not intended to be overly motivational or inspirational or self-helpy. It's not necessarily supposed to be all that, but it is professional development and personal development and stories of people who've overcome various obstacles and navigated through a lot of different hurdles and how they work through that. And that was what interested me at the time, and what still interests me now. And so that's the name of the show, and that's how it got started. Was this comment that someone made to me and my family, back when I was younger, but it stuck with me all this time. It's I thought it was relevant, and certainly has played out well. I think there's been people that have come to me and said, "Man, I just love the name of that podcast," because that that kind of resonates with me. And so if the podcast never was to become anything more than what it is now, I would say it's been worth doing.
Yeah, it's funny because I belong to certain Facebook groups for podcasters, and I'm sure you probably see a lot of those online. And you can always tell the newbies because they say, "Oh, I just posted my first episode. Tell me what you think. Am I doing this wrong? Am I doing that wrong?" And and a lot of people give them the same responses, so you can tell that the ones who are comfortable with it are all on the same page. They just say, just be consistent, be a good host. They were like, well, but I say, and Well, you have editing software to fix that, so you can sound a lot smarter. It's no big secret. See, I just said, it's no big secret that people talk like that, and it's okay.
It
So
is okay.
yeah. And were there any guests that you had that really exemplified that about knowing how to keep the doubt away?
Well, all the guests had interesting stories, and in the beginning, my strategy for getting guests was, I want to get these people that were New York Times bestselling authors and folks that I really looked up to, and so I kind of followed that path for about a year. I would pursue certain individuals that I was familiar with already or familiar with their work, and was gracious to talk to a lot of them. And while they were very kind to give me their time, they wouldn't necessarily share the episode. Not that that's the end of the world. But I guess after doing the show for about a year, I realized, hey, I want to kind of interview some people that aren't as well known, but still have some compelling stories. And that's when I came across just some more interesting people that, were pretty established or doing something really interesting, but they might not have been, as reputable or as like a name as recognizable as some author that's written New York Times best-selling books or whatever. And so I started to speak more than to people that were more than just authors. Like I spoke to a musician named Paul Cardall, and he's just done amazing things with his music. And Paul has an amazing story of where he actually had to have a heart transplant. And it is a very compelling story. Just a really fascinating guy. I mean, the guy's had great success on the Billboard charts and stuff, and his genre of music and stuff. But it's just I started to talk to people that weren't the normal people I was talking to, and what I found was I enjoyed the show even more. And a number of those people were gracious to share the episode, which I never require that, but it's always nice when a guest does that. And I just noticed when I was kind of aiming at different types of folks, I was getting a better response from people listening and from the guests. They were more kind and willing to share it. And so I've kind of stuck with that strategy for a while. And, I'd love to pretend my show has thousands upon thousands of listeners. It doesn't have that, but it's something that I still love doing. And the stories continue to be a source of encouragement to me. And I love the connections and the networking. And so for me, like I said, if nothing else ever came from the podcast, but I just got to network with all these interesting folks and heard some compelling stories, and it would have been worth it all along. And some other stories was a father dealing with his daughter who had cancer, as an infant daughter, and the experience they went through at St. Jude Hospital. And I mean, I could just name so many other stories, just things where people went through some really challenging times. And it wasn't all medical stuff. Some of it is, financial challenges, or some of it is, I was stuck in a day job and I really wanted to, move into a career path that I thought, was better for me and had more opportunities. So just all these different types of stories of how people figured things out, and got quite a collection now since 2013. Now it's 2020. So there's a lot of really interesting stories that we've been able to share through the show.
Yeah. And podcasting is all about good stories. I think that's why people like to stick around with shows, and especially when it's a story that almost kind of makes them feel a little less alone in the world. I think those are the things that really tend to resonate with the listeners.
I have gotten emails. This is not said in vanity, but I've gotten emails from one guy. He was like, "Hey, I just did like an 8-hour road trip, and I listened to your podcast the entire 8-hour drive." And when I read that email, I was like, I can't even get my wife to listen to me for 8 minutes, Jim. Like, this guy's crazy, but I was certainly flattered and grateful. And then I've had emails from people like someone in Uganda or someone in Singapore who said, "Hey, I found your show and I started listening to it. I really appreciate what you've done, and I've learned a lot about a lot of interesting people, and this has been helpful to me." And when I received that email, it's just like, people are finding the show. They are listening, and I don't always hear that, but sometimes I do. And when I do, it definitely encourages me to, hey, this is worth doing. It's a, it's not a money maker. It's not it's more of a passion project, but at the same time, it's encouraging to myself, and it's sharing good stories. And then there's people out there that are hearing that, and that's been a source of inspiration for them, and it's a way of paying it forward. And I think that's a win. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely nice. Yeah, I mean, the most inspiring emails I usually get are, "Well, we haven't received your check yet. Have you forgotten us? We will be turning this off shortly." That'll inspire me to run real quick.
Well, it's nice to keep the checks up to date when you can. That's usually encouraged.
I'm joking, folks. I'm joking.
Yeah, I think Jim is not really running. I think he's okay. So.
Well, that would explain the screen name why my last name never shows up on these episodes.
There's a reason you're just Jim, and we're going to let that one go. So, well played, and good for you. So.
Well, the podcast Sherpa, that's my name this week.
It's good to have handles. It's good to have stage names. Yeah,
that's right. So you said that you wrote a couple of books yourself?
Yeah. So one of the books that I wrote, a lot of people were asking me about growing their podcast, and I had tried a few things that I thought were like creative, and I was like, well, have you tried this? No, I never even thought to do that. Oh, and I had that question asked to me enough. I was like, you know what? I'm going to put together a little presentation. So I did a webinar one time with some friends, and I shared top 10 tips for growing your podcast audience or whatever. And I shared these tips, and the feedback was so encouraging that it occurred to me, I was like, I should probably just put this into a Kindle book. I've heard that's not that difficult to do. And so I took that content and just kind of wrote it out and kind of gave more examples and pieced it together, and had a few people that were gracious enough to guide me and point me in the right direction. So I came out with a Kindle book, and the Kindle book did reasonably well. And then a guy who was already a traditionally published author invited me to co-write a book with him on a topic that was important to both of us. And so we decided to team up. And when I did that, he had gone to the publisher who he was signed with and said, hey, I'm going to write this book with this other guy. He's not a published author, but it's just a topic that we really want to do. It's okay if you guys don't want the book. We'll just do it through Amazon and do it, self-published. And the traditional publishers no, we love that idea. We'll just sign Jared as an author too. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm a traditionally published author, and that was totally by accident. I never applied for it. I never asked for it. It was just through the podcast. I'd interviewed a gentleman, and we became friends. And then he was like, "Let's co-write a book," and it made sense. So we kind of pieced that together and worked through that process, and ran a crowdfunding campaign actually to help grow the visibility of the book and raise a little bit of money. And the book did reasonably well. It was an Amazon bestseller, and it was also featured in Publishers Weekly. It was a bestseller. We didn't get on like Wall Street Journal or New York Times or anything like that, but I was very pleased with the outcome of that. And there's still people that will contact me this day going, hey, I read that book, and that really helped me. And so there's two books that I've written. One was co-written, and that was a traditionally published book. And then there was one that I wrote just myself, and that was self-published, and that's in Amazon, just a Kindle book. But I have gotten that itch recently, Jim. I think I'm going to try to write my third book, especially with the COVID crisis going on, and there's a little more downtime. So there's a good possibility that I'm going to take the time out to kind of piece together another book. A lot of people will ask me questions about hosting live events. Was there something else that I do? There's not a lot of live events going on right now, of course, and rightfully so because of the pandemic. But that's something we've had a lot of experience with, my business partner and I. And I thought, you know what, I should probably write a little book about that because people ask me about it constantly. So that might be my next book. Is I'm going to call it "Throw the Party," and there's an interesting story behind that, which I can tell you if you like. But
sure, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, so when I was in 10th grade. I had started a new high school. So I had left a smaller private school and went to a much larger public school in the city where I lived, Montgomery, Alabama. And I was, I think to put it nicely, I was a fish out of water. I was definitely out of my element. go into this new environment, this new school. And like any high schooler, you want to be accepted, you want to be cool, or you want to be noticed, or some of those different sentiments and thoughts that I would think a lot of high school kids have. And I remember I was in a history class with a football player. His name was Wayne, and I made the mistake. This is a terrible thing, but I didn't realize what I was doing until it was too late. But I had told this guy Wayne, "Hey, my mom's going out of town this weekend. I'm thinking about having a few people over."
Uh-oh.
That's like, as soon as that word escapes your mouth, it's like, I need to get that back. It's too late. Well, and this guy's like, "Oh man, Jared's having a party." So this guy just goes and starts telling everybody, "Man, Jared's having a party this weekend. Everybody's going." And I, at that time, I was like, "Oh no, if I don't have this party, like, it's like social pariah, I'm gonna be like a social outcast if I don't have this party now." So I was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. It was like do or die. It was like, okay, if I don't have this party, then I'm the jerk who told everybody I was having a party and then canceled it. I was like, I should just have the party. So I talked to one or two people that I trusted, and they're like, "Okay, we'll come over and we'll kind of take everything that's breakable in the house and we'll lock it in one room, and we'll just, they're like, "We're going to help you. We'll have this party." And so, the night came. It was a Saturday night, and over 200 people come to my house. And they're in my front lawn. They're in my house. They're in the backyard. Um, it, it was a big fiasco, and people were parked all the way down the street that I lived on, and then on other streets, and throwing empty beer bottles in the neighbor's grass, and making a lot of noise, and it was a very big party. 200 may not seem like, I mean, if you can imagine 200 people in your home, I mean, it's a lot of people. And so I just kind of went with the flow. Some things happened, like a shotgun was pulled on somebody. This is not a joke. This really happened. And the police were called. There was several people arrested for public drunkenness. Everybody scattered. Yeah. So it was like this scandal, like this scandalous thing. I had, some things broken in the house, like some tile, and there may or may not have been someone who urinated on my wall, stuff like that. So it was a crazy party. So the next day, I spent all day Sunday cleaning up and fixing whatever I could, and just trying to get things back to normal, putting things back where I thought they went. I couldn't remember where everything went, so I put stuff where I thought they went. Eventually my mom gets home, and she's like, "Why is this here? And why is this here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I played a joke on you. I just wanted to see if you would notice." Ah. And my mom didn't have any, she didn't know any better. Until the neighbors, she talked to the neighbors, and the neighbors told her what I did. And then I got in trouble. But the moral of this story, I've kind of built this up, but I went back to school that Monday morning, and my head low, thinking, "Man, what? My mom's never going to trust me again. I've just betrayed her trust, and I've held this big party, and people got in trouble, and now I'm probably going to come to school, and people are going to blame me." And so I come to school, and it was the opposite. It was like I was the most popular kid in the school. Everybody was talking about this party. Everybody all of a sudden knew who I was. I went from being like this nobody, anybody knew. Nobody knew who I was. So like the whole school was talking about me. And the teachers all knew me. I mean, it was like this aha moment. like I didn't anticipate that reaction, but that's what happened. And so the reason I'm if I write a book about live events is I'm going to call it Throw the Party. And I'm going to tell that story in the beginning of me throwing this party in high school, and how, all of a sudden I was instantly catapulted into the limelight, right or wrong, and how throwing live events and doing things to build community can actually have that same effect. It can dramatically increase your the perception of what you're doing. It can it can just increase your profile, so to speak, and create more opportunities for community building and things like that. So you haven't perfectly hashed it out, but that's what I'm thinking. Throw the party, and it would be a book about helping people if they want to start their own event. So yeah. Anyway, sorry if that was long-winded, but that's kind of the idea. So
No, that's okay. And in a time like this, and we are recording this during the little era of quarantine right now.
that's true. So you wouldn't throw a party right now, and you shouldn't.
Yeah, you don't do that now. But when you're sitting down and writing, though, I was saying that I think after this, you're going to see a lot of interesting books coming out because maybe the writers are going to have that time to write and edit and rewrite and just really tweak everything down to the most minute detail in what they want to express.
I have no doubt that you're right. And some of the best innovations come when things are kind of down, so to speak. The economy's down, and then next thing you know, you have all these technologies coming forth, like I don't know, Uber and dozens of others. But it will be interesting to see what innovations, what creative ideas, what kind of projects come forth from this time period where people have had more time to think and reflect. And one of the other days, I was taking a walk. I was talking with my sister, and I just had this instant idea for the business in my head, and like it had not occurred to me before, but it did on a simple walk. So I told my business partner, and I don't know what's going to come from that idea, but it's just kind of another one of those eureka moments. Just like I was just walking, and I had this idea, and now I wrote it down, and let's see what happens with it. So yeah, it's kind of neat. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of really interesting stuff come from this time, and hopefully good things, because there's been a lot of bad things, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately we're going to have to take the good with the bad. A while back, I was having a conversation with a guy named Oliver Robbins, and Oliver is an actor. He was in Poltergeist. He was in Airplane 2. He was a child actor, and then later on he became a director and did a lot of movies himself, directed a lot of movies himself. And we were talking about this, and he said, when you think about the last pandemic in 1918, he said, what happened after? What did they call it? The Roaring 20s, right? You had this great music and all these movies that came out, and everything just kind of came alive. People weren't, people just wanted to be happy again.
Well, then I think we're about to see that same thing.
I hope
somebody asked me the other day, like, what's the first thing you want to do when you come out of quarantine? I was like, I want to go sit down and eat at a Mexican restaurant. I was like, that's a lame answer, but it was true. Like, I just want a margarita and some queso, so which I could make at home, but you get the idea.
Well, while you're hanging out and spending some time by yourself or with your family, are there any podcasts that you like to listen to?
I really do like to listen to podcasts, and some of it's the true crime stuff. So Crime Junkies is a one that gets a lot of play on my playlist here. One thing that not everyone knows about me that they might find kind of funny or random is that I tend to like things related to professional wrestling, which I know is some people are into that and some people aren't. But there's a guy named Conrad Thompson. He interviews a gentleman named Bruce Pritchard. Bruce used to do writing and do a lot of the storyline development for the World Wrestling Entertainment or World Wrestling Federation back in the day. And so Bruce Pritchard worked very closely with Vince McMahon. And now they do a podcast where they go back, 10, 15, 20 years, and they talk about these different events and these different storylines in detail and the idea behind them and kind of the backstory. And growing up as a wrestling fan, I remember a lot of these things, but I didn't know this other side of the story. So that podcast may seem random, but it's one of my favorites. I love listening to that show. It's always interesting to me because, I'm interested in that topic. And then there's other interesting things. There's different people that I look up to and respect. And one gentleman's name is Timothy Keller. I always enjoy listening to him. He has a lot of different insights that I find fascinating. And yeah, there's a lot of great podcasts out there. I like a lot of the stuff Wondery does. Some of their shows that have really been great is like the Joe Exotic show. It's kind of a piggyback off of the Tiger King podcast, and Bad Batch is another one. Dr. Death, all of almost anything Wondery does, you can't go wrong with. So but yeah, there's so many good podcasts. My goodness, we could talk all night. So Yeah, those are a few that I enjoy. So,
All right. Well, we have this part of the show, and we call it
Shameless self-promotion.
shameless self-promotion. And this is where you get to let the audience know where they can reach you or listen to you or follow you or buy you a kazoo.
well, the first place they should go, and I mean this wholeheartedly, is Jim, the podcast Sherpa. They should be checking out your podcast, and rightfully so. So if they're not subscribed, need to hit subscribe, leave you a rating and a review. And then if they're going to look in another place, aside from the obvious, one of the things that my business partner and I do is a conference that's actually for podcasters. It's called Podcast Movement. And we've been doing that since 2014. And this year with the pandemic, our event was going to be in August. Looks like we're going to push it back to October. But it's just a lot of podcasters to get together and all aspects of podcasting. It's not just one category. It's a variety of categories and people from all levels. People who are starting out. People have been doing it for 15 years. You got people from Apple that are there, people from Spotify and Pandora, and so it's a really cool place for anyone that is into podcasting or think they want to get into podcasting. Podcastmovement.com is the website to go check out. And I would encourage you to take a look at it. And when it's safe to do live events again, maybe check out one of the live events. But we have some other newsletters and things that are worth checking out. And if you want to connect with me personally, LinkedIn's probably the best way. Just look up Jared Easley on LinkedIn. You should be able to find me. And I'm also on the other social medias like Twitter and Instagram and stuff. So I always enjoy meeting new people.
We should point out that the Podcast Movement get together. It's not going to be at Jared's mom's house.
No, it will not be at my mom's house. It'll be at the Hilton Anatole, which is a nicer venue and can fit more people, assuming it's safe to have an event.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a bunch of podcasters together. That furniture is not lasting very long.
That's it. That's in Dallas, Texas. We move the event around every year. I've learned I'll never have any other events at my mom's house. So that's to keep the peace with my mom mainly. So yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking to an author and a podcaster who definitely lives up to the mantra of his show called Starve the Doubts. His name's Jared Easley. Make sure you check out his podcast and maybe you'll get inspired too. Jared, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Jim, I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful for the time. And I hope all things in Strong Island continue to stay strong.
And now it's time for Sherpa Suggestions.
Okay, I figured since Jared is an accomplished author, this week's Sherpa Suggestions will be about podcasts about writing and also hosted by writers. So what do we have on the agenda? We have Full Disclosure with James O'Brien, The Tolkien Road. There's a lot of things about Middle-earth and The Hobbit, by the way. The Tim Ferriss Show. We don't talk too much about Tim Ferriss, and he's a well-known writer and podcaster as well. The Al Franken Podcast. Scott Sigler's audiobooks. Author to Author. Don't Quill the Messenger. Shakespeare Authorship Explored. Shakespeare. He doesn't sound familiar. I don't know who he is. The name, I don't know. The name just doesn't sound familiar. But anyway, what's in a name anyway? Okay, so we are one down in the 2 for 2 mini podcasts week. Thank you so much to Jared Easley for coming on the show and having a lot of fun. He was a great guest. And be sure to check out his podcast, Starve the Doubts. And tomorrow, part 2 of 2 for 2 mini podcasts, we will be speaking with Matt Preston. And Matt hosts a podcast called The Apathetic Vegan. And we will be talking a little bit about veganism and vegetarianism and exercise and all that other fun stuff that keeps you healthy. Be sure to follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook with one word, Sherpalution. And that's a great word because you can listen right on my website, Sherpalution.com, Sherpalution.com. Yeah, I shouldn't be a singer. Sorry about that. Okay, Mr. Bruce, I think I'm already in enough trouble, so if you could please show everyone the door, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir. See you, rebels. Viva la Sherpalution!
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yeah, I'll come back now, you hear?